Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good afternoon, listeners. It is a chilly day here in suburban Chicago. The clouds are kind of gloomy out, and I'm not looking forward to getting rained on. Hopefully I won't. I'm taking a walk while my daughter is in swim practice. If you've been listening to the podcast a long time, I believe that the first and maybe second seasons in the middle of the run, so like in the number 50 or so and number 150 or so, I was recording walking around in this area. That's back where I am now. I don't know. That jogs memories for me. I don't know if it does for you, but that's what I'm doing. I was thinking about what to talk about today. And, Kickstarters have been popping off left and right. New things that I want to find out about, new things I want to buy, new things I get excited about. So I was thinking it would be interesting maybe to talk about what I have to hear about a game to make my ears perk up. What are the things that get me over that initial hump of like, oh, there's a game. I want to check this game out. Because I don't check every game out. There are factors that make me want to check something out or not. It's not to say that I won't check out games that don't fit these criteria, but these are the things that perk my ears up, that make me go, oh, I need to seek that out, click the thing on Board Game Geek, so I add it to my wish list so I can keep an eye on it, make sure that I figure out whether I'm interested or not. Whether I ultimately am interested isn't really the point, but like, what does it take to have me get interested? So that's what I'm talking about today, is what does it take to get me jumping out of my pants for a new game? Champing at the bit, or chomping at the bits, as they would say on The Secret Cabal, rather than champing at the bit, which is the correct thing to say. So, in that regard, here we go. The first one, probably the biggest factor, the biggest thing that would make me get excited first, is the designer. I do hold to the auteur theory of board games that the biggest factor in what a game is like and whether it'll be fun is the designer. Some designers are hit and miss. For me, a Reiner Knizia is a hit and miss. David Turksey is a hit and miss. As much as I like some of his designs, some of them have been misses for me. There are a variety of designers where I know their names. If I see that their name is on it, Scott Almes is another example of that for me. These are designers who I'll take a look, but they're not going to get me to perk up. But there are some that will. So here's my list of designers that can get me to perk up. I bet regular listeners can say it along with me. The first and foremost is Martin Wallace. If Martin Wallace's name is on a game, I am looking at that, and I'm looking at it hard. Right now, Anno 1800 is sure looking lovely. It's beautifully produced. Shut Up and Sit Down just talked about what an interesting game it is, except it's about colonialism. Come on. I don't want to play that. I will play Australia, though, and there's an expansion for that going on right now on Kickstarter, which is very exciting. Next up, Vladimir Suchi, the designer of many games, including most recently Underwater Cities and Praga Kaput Regni, both of which are great. He's one of my favorites as well. Very rarely has a miss in terms of the kinds of games I enjoy and the kinds of games he makes. So Vladimir Suchi, yes please. Richard Garfield. I always take a look at a Richard Garfield game. He's not a grade A 100% kind of designer. Frankly, neither is Martin Wallace, but he always does interesting stuff, and he is a very, very good designer. I have several of his designs. Dunstan and Gilbert. This is probably the lowest, I don't want to say lowest tier. That doesn't sound very nice, but the least recognized of the designers that I'll mention today is Dunstan and Gilbert. But I love Elysium, and I really, really like Chocolate Factory, and I like Costa Rica. So on the strength of those three games alone, I'm willing to look at whatever they're working on next. So yeah, that's exciting. Dunstan and Gilbert. Elizabeth Hargrave, Wingspan is incredible. Mariposas is very good. Tussie Mussy is very good also. I mean, Tussie Mussy is very light. It's a very light game, but still really good. So, 3 designs, 3 great games. Yeah, I'm in. Let's see what Elizabeth Hargrave has coming next. I'm excited to see it. Vlada Chvátil, of course. One of my favorite designers, probably, I don't know, 3rd or 4th. I mean, Through the Ages, amazing. Galaxy Trucker, amazing. Dungeon Pets, really, really good. Amazing even. Dungeon Lords, very good. Code names? Come on, code names? Yeah, so Vlaada Chvátil definitely gets a look from me. Then we got Karl Chudzik. Oh man, Karl Chudzik knows how to make a game. Glory to Rome, great. I've only played it once, so I'm not as familiar with it as some people, but very, very good. Innovation, excellent. Motainai, excellent. The space one, Impulse, is that what it's called? Very good also. So, 4 for 4 for me. I heard his Grizzly Bear game wasn't good, but everything else, yeah. Karl Chudzik, I'm in. So those are the designers. So if I hear a designer's name, one of those, automatically I want to check it out. That doesn't mean I'm going to buy it for sure. Although, frankly, Vladimir Suchy, sight unseen. I encounter a new game he's designed, I bought it. In fact, that's what I did after Underwater Cities came out, or maybe right before. I think Prodigal's Club was what turned the corner for me. I finally played Prodigal's Club, and I was like, oh man, this game is so good. I'm going all in. So I got the League of Six. I got 20th Century. Both of those are good. Shipyard is great. Underwater Cities, excellent. And Praga Kaput Regni, I'm going to call it very good for now because I've only played it the once, so I can't really speak to whether it's great. But yeah, so Suchy might be the only designer on here I would buy sight unseen or review unread. Although Karl Chudzik is a close second. If Karl Chudzik has a multi-use card game that he's come out with, I'll probably buy it. Plus, they're also like $20 usually. So that is the top thing that will attract me. The next one is there are a few publishers to whom I have a strong loyalty as well. So among those, probably the highest level of loyalty for me is Mind Clash Games. So they've come out with 3 games so far, which isn't all that many really, but they're all great. I mean, Tricarion is great. Anachrony is great. Cerebria is great. 3 for 3 home runs, beautifully produced games, gorgeous components, lovely art, stellar gameplay, a treat to have on your shelf, a treat to get onto your table. I'm really excited for Perseverance. There's going to be tons of great stuff in that. There's just no stopping them. Well, whatever. There's lots of things that could stop them, but for my money, Mind Clash Games, they're right up there. So that's almost a no-brainer for me. I will always take a look at stuff coming out of Fantasy Flight Games. It doesn't mean I'm going to buy it. Fantasy Flight has had varying degrees of quality, and there's a lot of stuff of theirs I haven't bought, but I'll always take a look because it's always at least interesting and usually very well made and well designed. So yes, Fantasy Flight Games for sure. Another one like that, Boards and Dice. I actually don't have that many games by Boards and Dice, but it seems like each of the games they bring out really has some compelling and interesting stuff going on. And it's one of those companies where every game they come out with, it's worth taking a look at. I don't think I've ended up buying that many of them, but really interesting productions, games worth talking about, games worth looking at. Yeah, good stuff. And then finally, Delicious Games. This is kind of a cheat because that's Vladimir Suchy's game company. So basically that's just saying Vladimir Suchy Games, but I had to put it on there. All right, so we've talked about designer, we've talked about publisher. Those are pretty obvious. I think they're pretty obvious. So what are 3 more things that will grab me on the first pass, that'll make me go, ooh? So imagine we're at a con and I am perusing the game area and trying to figure out what I want to play or buy. What are the things that'll grab my attention? So here's 3 more. First one, I did mention it offhandedly a little bit, multi-use cards. I really like a game that has multi-use cards because built into every turn, every decision is multiple things to think about. You have to think about, am I going to use this card as a resource? Am I going to use this card as an action? How am I going to use this card? Multi-use cards have multiple uses in my heart. So what are some examples of that? Karl Chudzik games tend to be the epitome of the multi-use card game. So you've got your Glory to Rome. You've got your Motainai. Not so much Innovation. Innovation is not multi-use, although it is, it sort of is a little bit, but not like Motainai. So in Motainai, you can use a game as currency. You can use a game as a product. You can use a card as currency. You can use a card as a product. You can use a card as a worker. Yeah, I guess resource, worker, or product. So there's 3 different ways that you can use a card when you play it. Or action. Yeah, 4th is the action. So there's actually 4 different ways that you can use any given card. And so the interplay between these variety of cards is really quite stunning and well worth a look. You know, people have talked about Matainai as being Carl Chudik's sort of return to Glory to Rome, and they are very similar in some ways. But the biggest thing is that Glory to Rome has this follow mechanism that is pretty great, where I play a card and call out an action, and you can follow that action if you have a card that will also do that. And then you can put in place cards that will let you do that without you having to do much work or do extra work. It's really a compelling system and quite a delight. Another game that does this really well is Race for the Galaxy. In Race for the Galaxy, your cards they can be planets, they can be commerce goods, they can be soldiers, they can be planets. Lots of different things happening in Race for the Galaxy. And you have to decide how you're going to use those cards. So each one that you draw, you can use in a variety of different ways. And when you do so, it just gives you a lot of flexibility. I have not played Race for the Galaxy in card form as much as I've played Roll for the Galaxy. I like the dice version better, but they are very similar. And I don't know that you really need to dispute one over the other because they're very similar. Then finally, I will call out a game that isn't really often talked about as a game with multi-use cards, but it absolutely is, and that is Arkham Horror. So Arkham Horror, the card game, you have a deck of cards, you build your deck, and the cards have, I guess, 2 uses mostly, but it's a really compelling pair of uses. So part of it is that the cards do different things depending what kind of card they are. So not every card can be used for everything, but some cards will allow you to do an action, some cards will become a weapon, some cards will give you a spell, some cards will allow you to have an ally, and each of these functions slightly different. But then most of the cards also have these little icons in the corner, which means that you can use them as part of a fight. So when you get in a fight, you may have a card that lets you have an ally in your hand, or a skill check actually. It's not just a fight, it's also research or all sorts of different things. But when you go to do a skill check, you can discard the card, and the icons that are on it will contribute to the skill check that you're doing. So that part works out really nicely. And if you're managing which kind of cards you have, then you have a nice variety of skill check bonuses that are coming through your deck. So, compared to the sort of weird, wild flexibility that the other 2 games I mentioned have, Arkham Horror isn't quite as much of a multi-use card game, but it still does have that imprimatur. And, I just really love the decision space that's created when cards do that, which makes me always perk up and check out a game when somebody says, hey, this game has multi-use cards. All right, two more. The next one is, I guess, sort of obvious, and this is great art. Oh, come on, Brendan, that's boring. Great art? What are you talking about? Everybody likes great art. That's true. But there are 2 ways that great art will grab me. One, there are a few artists that have the same compelling, you must check out this game feeling for me that my favorite designers do. And 2, sometimes just great box art will grab my attention. Just like a good record album cover or a good movie poster will grab your attention, great box art can grab you. So, first, the artists. There are a couple that stand out and are people who, when I hear that they're involved in a game, I want to go look at that game. The first is Beth Sobel. I've enjoyed her work for a long time. She did the Epic Resort game and Vault Wars, both of which are pretty entertaining. And then, of course, she's most famous or most well-known now for having done Wingspan, which has been a really compelling and interesting game. And so I really like having gotten to watch her grow as an artist, and every time I see her name on a box or hear her name in relation to a project, I think, oh, I bet this is going to be illustrated well. Even before that, though, the very first game artist that I remember hearing about was the guy who illustrated The Networks, because he also illustrated Scott Alm's twisty time travel game, Loop Inc., and that was Kwanchai Moria. Kwanchai Moria has this beautiful boxy style that's really weird. The characters have a sort of strange tortured quality in terms of how they look. They're always bent a little funny. They're a little boxy. Now, I know he can do other styles. I've seen, like, the art that he did for Flip Chips looks totally different. But if I see Kwanchai Moria's name anywhere near a game box, I want to check it out. Most recently, He worked on a new project from Ludi Creations, So You've Been Eaten. And boy, his art on that is beautiful. Totally made me want to get it. I did not, however, because I read about the gameplay and I decided it just wasn't for me. But I wanted to. There are two more artists that fit this category for me. One is Andrew Bosley. Andrew Bosley is probably the least well-known artist on this list, mostly because he's known for having done one game beautifully, and that is Everdell. Boy, Everdell is a looker. That game is so pretty, and the character art in it is so nice that Andrew Bosley earned a spot in my, if his name is on a thing, I'm checking it out. I want to see that Andrew Bosley art. Give me that art. So, Andrew Bosley made it on the list. And the last one is somebody who's been around for a while. They did Grim Forest. They did Brass, the Roxley Brass games, which are where they came to my attention. And this is a husband and wife artist duo who go by the artist name Mr. Cuddington. Now, Mr. Cuddington does beautiful art, really lovely work in a variety of styles, great use of color. So if I hear Mr. Cuddington did the art on a game, again, I'm there. I want to see it. I'm not necessarily buying it off the shelf, for sure. But I'm at least looking. Which, in this time of plenty, looking at a game is already something. And then, like I said, the last one is, really great cover art will grab me sometimes. The last example of that I can think of, boy, the box cover for, what was the game called? Night. Boy, see, I don't even know, because I did look, and the game did not fit what I wanted out of a game. But man, the art on the cover was beautiful. It was this person holding this melting candle. It was very eerie, very creepy, and really fit the mood of the game, I thought, really well. Once I read about gameplay, it seemed pretty simple, too simple for my taste, but boy howdy, it looked awesome. I think the word night was in it, but I can't remember the details. Future Brendan here. It turns out that game is called The Night Cage. There's a link in the show notes. So that's great art. That's the fourth thing that will just grab me by the lapels and make me go look at a game. Maybe honorable mention would be a good title. If a game has a cool title, I will go check it out. The Defense of Procyon 4. Yeah, I went and looked at that. So You've Been Eaten. I went and looked at that. Also Quanchai Mori art, designed by Scott Alms, so it has kind of double. That one also has a great hook, which brings me to the last one. And actually, the hook was the thing that really got me about So You've Been Eaten. The hook of that game is that you can play 0 players. There is an automated system it's a 2-player game. There's an automated system for the monster and an automated system for the pilot, so you could play either side. That also means you could pit the automated system against the automated system and just run it without ever doing anything. I mean, you'd still have to manipulate the components, but the game would play itself, which I think is an amusing quirk, something fun to hang a hook on, get people to check it out. In a similar way, I remember when Vast came out, the hook that you'd be able to play The Cave. Boy, that got a lot of people really interested in the game. I love when a game has a cool hook like that. Two more that grabbed my attention based on the hook, how they described it. One was Obsession, which was consistently described, as far as I'd seen, as either Pride and Prejudice, the board game, or more often Downton Abbey, the board game. And boy, that really hit home in terms of what the theme was about and making me want to check it out. Ultimately made me get it, and I think it's definitely going to be a top play for us in the last year. It's one of my wife's favorites. I got her the expansion for her birthday, and she seemed to really like that. So Obsession, goes on the list. That's a good one with a great hook. And last, my favorite hook, the first board game I backed on Kickstarter back in 2013, the game that introduced me to Martin Wallace. The hook, it was an IP game. The hook was based on the Neil Gaiman short story, so yes, please. In this game, you are either loyal to the Cthulhu elder gods who have taken over the houses of Europe, or you're a restorationist trying to restore humanity to their place at the top of the heap, but you don't know who else is on your team. And here's the hook. At the end of the game, there's whichever player is in last place, their whole team loses. So you could... that's just wild to me. Like, it's a game that the nature of the end condition compels you to try and help the other players, because you lose if the player in last place is on your team, but you can't ever tell for sure who's on which team. It's fascinating. And Wallace has done this a number of times. I was pulled in by the hook of, I think it's called Goa, Goa. I don't know if that's the right title. It's a game set in a sort of fantasy version of New Zealand with birds from New Zealand standing in for the tribes of indigenous people, and these dogs and cats invading invasive species. And the game plays on this idea that if you can gain power by helping them, but if you do, they will take over the island faster and the game will end quicker, but also you might lose because you took too much power from them. It's an amusing and frankly fantastic idea about how a game should work. He did the same thing with The Arrival, in which you are trying to defend Ireland from the invasion of the Fae, and you can let them take over things and gain power from that. But if they take over too much, then the person who helped them the least wins, instead of the person who has the most power. So there's a trade-off to be made, which I find to be a fascinating approach and make for a cool idea, a cool hook. So a cool hook is the last thing that I will offer as something that makes me sit up and want to go check out a game. Well, that's about it for my time today. What makes you want to go check out a game? What makes you stand up, run to Board Game Geek, or run to your game store, or run to the internet and find out about a game? What are the things do you have anything that's an insta-buy, and why? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know. I would love to hear from you. You can email me, Brendan at Rattlebox Games, or message me directly there. Wombat929 is my username. I look forward to hear from you. Until the next time, I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.